Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1000 to 2000 Elo in chess.com rapid games, where I'll be trying to explain my thought process as best as I possibly can for your education and entertainment. Check out the previous episodes below if you haven't seen them yet. And we have a Scandinavian. I honestly hate playing against the Scandinavian. I really do. And my opponent goes for the knight f6 variation. But what I'm going to try and show in today's video is what it takes to become a 2000 Elo player, essentially. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play what you could consider to be a passive response to the Scandinavian. But it's essentially, if it goes to plan, going to get me a middle game where it's literally just going to be a test of who understands chess better. Now, the point of this knight to f3, bishop e2 thing is that I want to delay. I mean, normally after queen takes, you go knight c3 and kick the queen away, right? That's not what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to get castled quickly, and then I want to expand in the center with d4 and c4. Now, my opponent can try and stifle my expansion with the move e5, but I think, yeah, he actually goes for it. But I think that things get quite complicated after maybe bishop b5, trying to undermine the e-pawn. Basically, what I'm trying to do here is get rid of all the opening theory from the opening, which is essentially what we've done by adopting this unorthodox setup, and literally just try and play principled chess in a way that can hopefully show like what it takes to be a 2000 Elo player. I'm also very tempted by the move d4, because if takes, I'm threatening to take his knight and ruin his pawn structure. So take, my queen is very active. I'm preparing bishop f3. I'm preparing rook e1. That looks very nice. If d4, e4, knight e5, maybe. Or maybe even knight to g5. Actually going after the pawn looks pretty nice. I'm going to go d4. d4 seems like a very principled move. I was toying with the idea of bishop b5. I mean, it feels unjustified to put the bishop on e2 and then put it on b5. It might be the right approach, but I was a little bit concerned about bishop g4 ideas there, trying to exploit the fact that my knight would now be pinned to my queen. So d4 feels like a very good way to go about the position. And my opponent takes. And what I'm going to try and do is exploit the fact that he hasn't castled yet. So we're going to start with taking on d4. You do have to be aware that this queen is lined up with my knight. So, you know, let's imagine this knight was elsewhere and there was a bishop on d6. And after something like takes, black would have like bishop to h2 check, for example, winning my queen. You do have to be aware when there's like a piece between like that, but in this case, the knight can't really go anywhere useful to do a whole lot. I mean, obviously we can just take the knight if the knight moves anyway. Although if knight f4, you know, you should probably just take it, for example. But if like knight to b4, we can just go c3 even, or we could take here, or we could play something else. Knight b4 is a very unorthodox move, though. We may even have bishop b5 there, which does look kind of tempting. And then we're preparing c3. But anyway. Let's see what my opponent does. Taking just seems much better for me, because my queen targets g7, making it difficult for this bishop to develop. We also target the knight, of course. He does take. This doesn't feel correct, though. Now, I assume my opponent is planning on going bishop to f6 to try and justify the sacrifice of the pawn, which is an interesting idea. I'd probably go queen to h6 to ensure black still can't castle, and then we're preparing rook to e1 ideas. We could start with bishop f3 attacking the knight, but then the knight drops back to f6 and we can no longer take on g7. So let's be bold. Let's take. My opponent does go bishop f6. I think queen to h6 makes a lot of sense. And I'm literally just trying to stop my opponent from castling. I am aware of the potential dangers that black could cause with rook g8 sort of ideas. But my argument is going to be that my queen controls h3, so that's okay. I can always go bishop to d3 to stop rook to g6 ideas, kicking my queen away. I'm also preparing rook e1. Bishop f5, okay, that's interesting. Bishop d3 offers a trade, which looks decent for me. I can even consider the move c4 here, which looks quite aggressive, but c2 is under attack. And when the knight moves, where can the knight go? If the knight goes to b4, knight to a3, stopping knight c2. And then we're preparing stuff like rook d1, because the bishop is only defended by a knight. Perhaps. We do have to be aware of the fact that b2 is quite weak, though, which makes me not really want to play this move. c3 is probably a bit more solid. But, I mean, it's also passive, because where is my bishop going now? I mean, it doesn't seem particularly obvious. We could go rook d1, pinning the knight, which is another interesting idea, although queen e7, bishop f3, queenside castle. I think black can develop a little bit too quickly there. I don't want to allow that. We could go rook e1, just lining our rook up with the king. Queen e7 would be an interesting response, because whilst it does line the queen up with my rook is undefended. So it's not quite so simple. Rook e1 does look like a good move, though. I mean, if this, I could even consider bishop d2, because if bishop to b2, I have bishop b5 check. Oh wait, no, what am I on about? If here, I have bishop to b5 check anyway, and the queen doesn't have time to take my rook. So yeah, that's fine. That's fine. My queen is safe. I don't have to worry too much about my queen, because there's no bishop g5 ideas. Yeah, my opponent goes for it, but I think this just blunders bishop b5 check, which is the key move. Key move. Yeah, I'm sure that wins. Let's play it. Bishop b5 check. My opponent is not in time to take my rook. This could lead to a very early resignation, in all fairness. And that would be quite an interesting thing. And I think, to be fair, I've probably demonstrated like the difference between a 1600 and 2000 plus rated player in this game, because I've done nothing special. I really haven't done anything special. I've just developed my pieces, displayed better tactical awareness, and now we are just going to try and clean up. Also, I think the bravery to take on g7, I think it's harder for lower rated players to do that. Although it's probably more like a bell curve, because someone who's really low rated will just go, oh, that's a free pawn, right? And they won't even notice that bishop f6 gives good counterplay. Let's just try and trade, and then get developed as quickly as possible. And then I think somebody who's maybe sort of middle rating, I don't even know what I classify as middle rating, but it'd be like a bell curve. So it'd be like lower rated players just take it, and then as you get more middle rating, people will be more scared to take it. And then as you get higher rated, the bell curve probably drops, and then you just go and take it again. You know what I mean? There's like all the memes with the bell curve format. But yeah, I mean, obviously now we just need to clean up and secure the victory. Let's not do anything special or fancy. Just get everything traded. I want to go knight c3 and offer another trade. I don't really care if my pawn structure gets a bit damaged by doing this, because realistically, a queen for a rook, and we also have an extra pawn, is going to be winning. As long as we don't trade off too many of the pawns, in which case it could technically be a draw, which realistically isn't going to happen. Let's go knight c3. I know my opponent can damage my pawn structure if he accepts this. He castles queenside. Smart idea. Bishop e3 looks decent. Taking also... Yeah, let's just take. Let's not be afraid. This looks nice, and the bishop can try. That's not how a bishop moves. The bishop can try and get involved, but I think we can shut down all the counterplay with bishop f4, taking away rook d6, which would target my queen, taking away bishop d6, of course, and if a move like rook g8, we probably just play bishop to g3, and we block up the g file. And maybe then my opponent can try bishop to d6. Yeah, he goes for this. We could consider g3, but that feels unnecessarily weakening. Although, actually, I think I prefer bishop f1, but then rook g6. Then rook g6. I don't really want to allow that. Actually, though, bishop f5 check looks very strong. Because this king is out of squares, my opponent will have to trade with me. So that's even stronger. There we go. Like, yeah, my gut instinct was to go bishop g3, but always look for alternative candidate moves. Because bishop f5 makes our job a lot easier because it forces trades. And I mean, we're threatening to invade with our queen as well. Because if here, you know, there's some problems in the black position if there weren't already. If you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps to motivate me keep making these videos for you guys. And hopefully I've been able to demonstrate, you know, I guess what it takes to be a 2000 elo player in a certain way. Like being calm, looking for candidate moves, not relying too much on your openings, which is something I stress massively on my channel. And being tactically aware. Now, the computer thinks I've made a mistake in this game. It'd be interesting to see what it thinks that mistake is. But let's get into the game analysis and see what it has to say. Okay, so 91.2% accuracy. That's pretty damn good. 76.5 for my opponent. I think the computer has gone back on its thinking that I made a mistake, which I have no idea where I could have made it, to be fair. But let's have a look. So e4, d5 takes. What I like to do after queen takes d5 is again just go for this system, which, you know, is relatively passive. But let's just play some normal moves out here. What often happens is, I don't know, let's play some just normal Scandi moves. I know this isn't necessarily the best lines for black. I don't know, knight bd7 or something. Then I like to go c4. Rather than knight c3, we delay the move c4, right, by not putting our knight on c3. We go for this relatively passive setup, but I mean, as we saw in the game, my bishop later came alive, and my knight also came alive later by going to d4. And after the queen moves, then we take the full center with d4. We then put the knight behind the c-pawn, and I have really good success in these positions. This bishop often comes to the f4 square, and you can even generate a lot of counterplay on potentially weak dark squares in the position. I've had many games like that. But my opponent goes for knight to f6. Knight to f3 is actually the best move, which I didn't know. Knight d5. Again, the computer wants to expand in the center immediately with moves like d4. But I like to wait a little bit. I like to get myself castled. And then my opponent plays e5. Now, if my opponent doesn't play e5, let's say he goes bishop f5, then the plan is, again, okay, not c4 here because of knight f4. We're not defending that square, and you can get into d3. So d4 first, and then after like e6, then c4, and then like knight f6, knight c3, this sort of setup, right? Big fan of this. Big fan of this. But, of course, my opponent goes e5. And I try to strike immediately. The computer likes rook e1, which makes sense. And after like bishop d6, then it wants d4, because if takes, I assume we have lots of different threats going on. If something like knight d7, we have knight g5. If bishop e7, making sure this is defended, we have a very active position. But okay, we go for the immediate d4. And here I thought that we can meet e4 with knight g5, which the computer agrees with. We've got some good pressure in this position. We are also still preparing the move c4. So let's say bishop to f5. We can go c4, knight f6, d5, knight e5, knight c3. And we're down a pawn temporarily, but this is a very nice position. You know, we have moves like bishop to f4 on the way as well. Maybe queen b3 in some lines. It's quite nice, quite nice. But my opponent takes. We take, and take. Now, the second trade is not so good for black, but the problem is the computer wants to go for bishop d6, for example, and it's very counterintuitive to want to allow the doubling of the pawns like this, so I can't really blame my opponent for trading with me. Because like a move like bishop d7, trying to stop the doubling of the pawns is just far too passive. Bishop f3, and white has a lot of pressure on the way. So my opponent liquidates, knight d4, queen d4. And the difference here is there's no knight c6 to attack my queen, because of course we just traded that knight off. So my queen is very, very active here. And if my opponent plays better moves than bishop e7, let's say, maybe, I don't know, bishop to e6, knight c3 is a move, rook e1 is a move. What's the idea? Like queen takes. And I suppose we put pressure on c7, get the rooks, no, not like that. Get the rooks on d1, e1, bishop f3, bishop f4. That all looks very, very nice for white because we're castled quickly. But my opponent goes bishop e7. And here you've just got to be brave. Because if you play, let's say, a slower move like rook e1, you can see the evaluation. I mean, black castles and he's absolutely fine. He's going to play bishop f6 and you don't have anything with the white pieces. You don't have anything. So we have to go in and take. Bishop f6 is, of course, the move to attack my queen and defend the rook. I go queen to h6, which is the best move. Kind of just sticking around, like putting pressure on a lot of different things. And my queen is perfectly safe because there's no bishop g5 because that square is well defended. And the only thing we have to watch out for is maybe a rook lift to g6. But even then, bishop d3 would cut out those ideas. Bishop f5. And we go rook e1, which is the best move. Bishop f3 was also good. I was considering the move c4, but I didn't love this position, and the computer agrees with me. Better would be to ignore the threats, and if the knight invades, we just go full counter-attacking mode, and I assume we have rook e1? No, bishop c6. Then rook e1. And yeah, okay. I mean, pretty complicated stuff, and then I assume we meet this with like queen takes and the game's over. But rook e1 first is better, and the point is that black doesn't have time to castle. That's the whole idea, is that black is running out of time, and like the best move, for example, is bishop e6, just shutting off this file at any cost. And it's not a very human thing to put the bishop on f5 and then drop it back to e6. Like, you know, that's difficult to admit. You misplaced your bishop like that. And then, you know, we can get nice and aggressive. I mean, I don't see why we need to allow this. It seems completely unnecessary. So, probably a move like bishop to f3 is more intuitive. Just applying lots of pressure to the black position. Because, of course, our threat here is, let's say, I don't know, queen d7. We can probably just do this, and after queen takes, take here, right? Because this bishop is pinned, so it couldn't take. But queen e7, that was the move I was initially concerned about. And my first thought was bishop d2, just defending the rook. But then I was like, well, my opponent castles queenside, and bishop f3, the queen just moves, and what am I doing? Like, what is my game plan here? Maybe not queen d6, but the queen moves. And our position isn't amazing. We're up a pawn, but the opposite side castling, black has got very nice development, and this is pretty scary. So, fortunately, I spot the only move, bishop b5 check. And black is not in time to take my undefended rook. So c6, we of course take. Bishop takes. Oh, I missed this idea. Maybe that's what the initial mistake was for in the game review. But, okay, yeah, I completely missed that. But it was no need to complicate things, to be fair. Bishop d3 is perfectly valid. I was more than happy to damage my pawn structure a little bit. Because, you know, if bishop f6, I was just going to go this. And I'll give up a pawn to play this, or this. Doesn't really matter. Point is, we're getting pieces off the board. But bishop drops back to e6. We go knight c3, offering a trade. Again, I don't care if my pawn structure gets a bit damaged. queenside castle, take, and we go bishop to f4, which is the best move. Now, the intention of this was to meet rook g8 with bishop to g3. And obviously, bishop f5 is the best move here, because it's way more forcing and way more aggressive. But, you know, bishop g3, the computer wants to sack the rook. I mean, come on now. I was a little bit concerned about this, but you can just give the pawn away, because you win a piece. And your king is surprisingly safe. There's very little black can do to really exploit it. Of course, if you go here, then it's a different story. You're actually getting mated because, you know, white has to try and block and you're just trapped in a cage. But bishop f5 and my opponent resigns because there's nothing you can do. Rook d7, I win a rook for a bishop. And if bishop e6, then take. You still have to go rook d7 and then I'll win your rook because the king cannot walk on to the dark squares. Very... Not an easy game. I think a very interesting game, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see another really cool video that YouTube thinks you're really going to like, check out the video that gets recommended up here. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, then check out the playlist that's down there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.